Okay, let's dive right into this explainer by acknowledging a cycle that I'm sure we all know a little too well. You know the one. You buy a brand new online course, you get absolutely hyped up to learn a new skill, and you dive in head first. But then, mysteriously, you find yourself completely quitting just a few days or weeks later. It's super frustrating, right? Well, today we are going to decode exactly why our brains are hardwired to reject this kind of learning.
So, the core question we really have to ask ourselves about this sudden drop in motivation is simply, why do we quit? Whether you're trying to pick up a new language, or maybe you're halfway through some highly recommended self-improvement book, what actually happens to that initial spark of enthusiasm?
When that motivation fades out, we almost always default to this super familiar, guilt-ridden internal monologue. We sit there, kind of beating ourselves up, thinking, man, I'm just lazy. I don't have the willpower. We tell ourselves we just lack the discipline to see things through. It feels like this massive personal failing.
But today, we're going to completely flip that idea on its head. What if I told you that quitting has absolutely nothing to do with being lazy?
To actually understand why we stop, we have to look at the biological reality of how our brain operates. You see, your brain isn't just some passive sponge for information. It's actually more like a ruthlessly strict energy accountant. It meticulously calculates every single drop of effort you spend to make sure you're surviving as efficiently as possible.
So, here is the really crucial point. Quitting is actually a biological disengagement protocol. Thinking hard, learning complex new stuff, changing your daily habits, all of that costs massive amounts of physical and mental energy. If your brain doesn't see a tangible return on that heavy investment, it just automatically pulls the plug to conserve your resources. From a neuroscience perspective, your brain is basically acting like a highly skeptical roommate. Picture it standing there, arms crossed, constantly asking this exact question before deciding whether to keep going. Is this really worth the energy? And if the answer is no, your motivation just vanishes, no matter how badly you consciously want to hit that goal.
And this brings us right to the hidden trap where most of us spend all of our time. It perfectly explains why the brain actively rejects our usual study methods.
Just think about our standard go-to learning activities: reading, watching videos, passively listening to lectures, endlessly highlighting text, or copying down notes word for word. Consuming information like this creates a really convincing illusion of progress. You feel productive, right? You intellectually understand more. But because you can't actually do anything new with that info yet, the brain looks around and notices that nothing in your life has practically changed. This illusion traps us in a totally broken loop. When you rely on passive learning, you're constantly feeding your brain input, followed by more input, and then more input. But because there's no action attached to it, there's no real-world result, which means absolutely zero reward. And without that reward, the brain quietly and efficiently kills your desire to keep going.
So how do we escape this? Well, we need to look at real-world evidence of how output absolutely crushes input. Let's talk about the sheer power of taking action. Imagine two people trying to learn how to cook. The person who actually masters the skill isn't the one who binged 100 different recipe videos but never turned on the stove. That's just wasted mental calories. The real learner is the person who watched just one single video, stepped into the kitchen, probably made a huge mess, but ultimately cooked 30 actual meals.
We see the exact same trap today with modern skills, like learning AI. You could easily spend weeks reading dense AI theory, comparing different language models, and saving endless prompt guides. But honestly, all of that means nothing compared to the person who learns just one basic prompt and uses it to actually create and publish a weekly newsletter. The secret here is not that the second person is inherently smarter or more talented. Not at all. The difference is simply that their actions generated a tangible result. Their brain got to see a physical, real-world manifestation of the energy they spend. Action is literally the ultimate key to unlocking sustainable motivation. Because the brain absolutely loves and craves positive feedback loops, we need to intentionally replace our old passive habits with a proactive, creation-based system. Instead of learning just to hoard knowledge, you have to learn to build. And you do this by using this incredibly healthy news cycle. Learn a tiny bit of information and then build something immediately. Then get some feedback on what you built, figure out how to improve it, and repeat. The golden rule here is that action must immediately follow a tiny bit of input.
And look, you don't have to wait until you're an absolute expert to start creating. Honestly, you shouldn't. Even the tiniest outputs work perfectly. A short journal entry, a quick 30-second video on your phone,
a rough blog post, or setting up a basic digital automation. These are small, easily achievable wins that your brain can register as a victory today.
Every finished piece, no matter how small or how imperfect, sends a massive signal to your brain. It says, look, this effort actually created something real. This brilliantly satisfies that internal energy accountant. It reinforces the behavior, organically grows your confidence, and gives you a fresh burst of motivation to do it again.
The most successful learners out there aren't just blindly, painfully disciplined. They just measure their learning by what they create. They allow every small creation to become the motivational fuel for their very next project. Because at the end of the day, knowledge might fill your mind, but creation is what actually changes your life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final question. A question to challenge your brain's strict energy accountant and spark your very next move. Instead of asking yourself what you learned today, I want you to ask yourself, what have you created today? Get out there, break the passive loop, and go build something.